This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by Brewers Outlet, Sunbury Motor Company, and Purdy Insurance. Now, from the Sunbury Motor Studio, here's Steve Jones.
All right, here we go into the next half hour. And this half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, the best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. A terrific service department that backs it up every step of the way. Whether it happens to be inspections, routine, difficult, quick lane, it is all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. All right. Time now to bring in the outstanding Nate Bauer. Not even extreme heat can keep him off the golf course. He is brilliant in any conditions.
That is not true. Extreme heat can keep me off the golf course, as can rain and children.
I don't know. I saw Ollie out there in the putting green with you one night.
That's fair. It's, you know what? I'm concerned for myself. I think it's been 3 weeks. Not good. It's been a while.
Wow. That is, yeah. Well, let's get to the big story to me, and that's Xavier Lucas. Look, Wisconsin doesn't want him back. Right? This is not what the lawsuit's about with Miami. It's about a 2-year deal, whether a contract is a contract, and whether there's tampering with the contract. I know it's shocking it's going to a court. I know that's stunning for most people, especially in this day and age. Nobody ever goes to court. So what is just your thought on what this lawsuit could mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, I am, I'll disclaimer, not a lawyer, but I do have heightened interest, as do you, in what this means for, I think the idea of amateurism and employment status are both intertwined in this one. And so, obviously, universities have gone, and the NCAA, obviously, have gone well out of their way, so far out of their way, to maintain this illusion that their student athletes are not employees of the university, even though it's, I guess you could make an argument, but it's not a great one at this point, that they are not paid employees of the university. And so the language of and again, this is just kind of from what I've seen of this case in particular, the language of the contracts are structured to maintain that illusion, right? So you sign an NIL deal with Wisconsin, and Wisconsin expects to be able to enforce that. And, okay, you signed a 2-year deal, you left after one. You are in violation of that contract. Miami, right? They're suing Miami, and Miami's in violation of that contract. But I think the technicality of it is that The contract itself that was signed is not a guarantee of playing for Wisconsin. It's a guarantee that Wisconsin is eligible to use the rights to his NIL. Right? So if Wisconsin doesn't, if that notion is challenged, Wisconsin is perfectly within their legal rights to continue to advertise on behalf of and use his name, image, and likeness in its promotion of the program. But obviously that's not what anybody here wants, right? That's not what's being sought out by any of these parties. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think this. I feel very strongly this way. The House settlement and some of what's happened in the legal sphere over the last month plus is not the end; it's the beginning.
No, it is just the beginning, and this is just the beginning of the lawsuits. The first one that gets a deal rejected by the clearinghouse will immediately get a lawyer and get rolling.
Yes. Yep. And how does Deloitte handle that? Right. What's their appetite for this? I mean, it's just it will be a cascade of challenges. Title IX, right, will obviously be challenged through all of this, and I think it already is being challenged through all of this. You're seeing some of the ramifications already to some of the Olympic sports based on the House settlement. So it's just conference realignment, when that was considered the dust settling on the changes in college athletics, is now laughable, right? What a quaint idea that a few schools, Nebraska going to the Big Ten was in some way this tectonic shift. Now it's the fundamentals of what it means for college athletics to exist is what's at stake and what's going to be played out over the next, the ensuing years, right? Over the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm. All right. Recruiting. Penn State's been getting commitments, but some of the bigger names did not fall Penn State's way during the course of this month. You're not going to get all of them, and down the road you may get some of them because they may go someplace else and eventually come here. Yep. Sounds like a far-fetched idea. Oh, wait, that's happened many times.
Yep.
But what does the last few weeks at least tell everybody about the landscape?
It tells everybody at Penn State that Penn State doesn't have enough money. And, I know that that's hard, for some fans to stomach. I think that certainly in revenues, right, you can point to the revenues and say Penn State's in a strong position, and it is in a strong position. The issue that Penn State football faces specifically right now is that it's when shooting for the absolute height of talent, you're running up against programs that have more and are more willing to spend it and kind of upend their right. They're willing to spend it on high school recruits, and it's not that Penn State isn't willing to spend it on high school recruits. It's that it's a combination of it can't afford to, given what it has invested in certainly players on this year's team that came back, and there's an argument those will flip over, and that's correct. But it will flip over under the tent of the new $20.5 million cap in terms of internally what can be spent on these things. So it's just look, I wrote something on Friday, and it was it's just to say, look, this is kind of these are choices certainly that Penn State has made to prioritize in this order retention of its developed players, right? Penn State believes itself to be, if not the best developmental program in the country, then one of the best.
Right.
Second, targeted, right, pinpoint targeting in the transfer portal to shore up needs, and then recruiting. And it likes the idea of having a system that makes sense, where you're returning all Big Ten player, regardless of the position, is not compensated worse than an incoming recruit who hasn't played a down of college football, regardless of what the market is. That works and has worked and will continue to work for the very middle, right? That just under the upper echelon of top talent, those top 100 type guys, those 5-star guys by the recruiting system services, but it doesn't work for those levels of players, because they are expecting to be compensated at the highest levels, and they are being compensated at the highest levels by programs that have the war chest to dole it out for those things.
Right, and then you go from there. But Penn State, the key for them is, as you mentioned, was roster retention. And roster retention could maybe, and for their sake, hopefully, bigger and better things, which then a lot of times rolls into recruiting. So, like, there's a catch-22 here.
Yeah, it's look. I mean, and look, there's and my expertise is Penn State. I am not intimately aware of the other challenges and benefits that other programs have going. But what I will say is at Penn State, this is just a unique time in the arrival of NIL, certainly, the needs of the stadium, right, and relying on a donor class to help support the creation of this massive renovation project, and then also having to rely on those same people and those same organizations until revenue share kicks in, which it now is kicking in, but having to top off that revenue share with those same donors, right? So the donors are squeezed, they're fatigued, they're tired of the same group of people being relied upon for millions and millions of dollars, and it's like the benefits of recruiting come with, yes, compensation, absolutely compensation. To me, it's the height of what this is, but also success on the field. So, too, is the selling out of the new stadium project, right? The new stadium is meant to raise new revenues, but you need to be successful on the field to get them, to get those butts in the seats. So all of this is kind of swirling around this specific crossroads, excuse me, that the program is at right now, and ahead of a season where, like, the good thing that Penn State has going for it is it's all in place right now. The roster's not changing from the guys that they have on this current team, and the current team that they have appears to be well-suited and prepared to compete for a national championship. Doesn't mean they're going to win one, but I think it's very fair to set the expectation at making the playoff, at least being competitive within it, and then you kind of see where the chips fall. But the pressure cooker is real this season for Penn State football, no doubt about it.
All right, so now let's get to the next part of this. The only way I think you can have structure, and I've maintained this, as you know, for years, is to somehow enter into collective bargaining. I mean, the term student-athlete is made up by the NCAA because they didn't want to pay athletes.
Yep.
Well, guess what? The athletes are going to get paid. I also think you need a little congressional help because you do need to get at least some layer of antitrust protection here to then do this. Can you see collective bargaining, or can you see the NCAA just playing the delay game like they have for decades?
Yeah, what have I seen from the NCAA and its member institutions to suggest that they we'll have this dramatic change of heart. Nothing, right? I would look. And people are talking about this a little more openly now. I think I'm sure you've had conversations to this end of a split, right?
Yeah.
As entities, the Big Ten and the SEC, and who knows, right? Like I don't want to talk about it as though it's a foregone conclusion, but this idea of a restructuring of college football and its relationship to the NCAA as an organization, I think is real, and I think is very much where this is headed. Where it becomes some type of minor league isn't right because people associate minor leagues with baseball. This will be its own professional organization, right? And these two leagues, depending on who's in it, will have their own television deals, but also their own rules and regulations, salary caps, employment status, collective bargaining, all of those things that can fit under those parameters, to me makes the most sense about where this is kind of heading and how it can resolve so many of the problems that currently exist with what it is today, right? The structure that currently exists.
Yeah, and to me, I think I'm not so sure younger fans are concerned about structure now, but I think the middle-aged to older fans who are used to structure would like to see some structure. Collective bargaining would at least give a structure, so that it's not just for the coaches and the players and for the athletic directors, but it also, I think, is for the fans, because if they have a structure and they understand it, then I think they're more willing to be on board with it.
Yeah, I struggle with the fan component of it, because I do think that they are so far down the list of priorities of what's being catered to, right, at this stage in the game, and
I know,
and I kind of understand why, right? The game needs parameters. It needs the primary stakeholders in this start with the players and the coaches and the programs themselves. They have to find some type of balance and some type of equity. However, I think you're right? What's being bet on right now, in my mind, is fans are fans no matter what. And they're fans no matter what because of the affinity that they have for either the university that they went to, the university that they live nearby, right? Whatever it is that allows them to gravitate toward a certain team in college football, that those bonds are greater than what they're being tested against. And I think they are greater than that, but I think there's also a limit to that. And it's interesting to see, they're already at a point where coaches want structure. I don't know that players do want structure, but I think they're going to get it. And I do think the fans want structure as well. So there just has to be at some point a collection of responsible adults in the room who say, hey, we're all willing to, because, again, this is kind of what it all boils down to, is the willingness to be governed. Somebody else said it, through this process. I don't know who it was, but the willingness to be governed is the biggest piece of this. And if all of these state legislatures creating their own rules, university athletic department or ADs and presidents who set things up to exploit the rules, if all of those things maintain, you're just going to have this destruction of the system. It will just, you cannot have a system that makes any sense at all if everybody within it isn't agreeing to the same set of rules. And for so long, they have not done that. So yeah, that's going to be tested over the next few years.
Basketball's into the second week of workouts. Any additional information to add to that?
No. I think there's still. I don't know that this roster is complete. I would expect that it's not complete. I would expect that they'll, right? So, just a matter of I'll be honest. I think they're in a tight spot right now. I look at this team, and I think there are reasons for some levels of optimism. I think that Yannick's going to get drafted. Is that this week or next week? This week?
Either Wednesday or Thursday. Wednesday's the first round. Thursday's the second round.
Right. So it just James Franklin's been talking about, and I'm switching sports here, but James Franklin has been talking in reference to basketball, how basketball in college athletics has shifted to this model of, the fab freshmen were the craze for a while, but how do you win? You win with older guys.
Yes.
And Penn State's got a lot of younger guys.
Oh,
Not
no.
They don't have any older guys, but they got a lot of younger guys, and they're going to be called into action right away. It's going to be demanded of them. So these weeks of summer practice are critical for them to develop those guys and squeeze as much juice out of them as they possibly can.
In watching them, there's talent, but it's green. How about that?
Yep, that sounds right. That is.
There you go.
You've got away with words, Steve. You always have.
My friend, always a pleasure. Jim Nance said a good golfer shoots 72. You're on the verge.
Wow. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Anytime, my friend. The outstanding Nate Bauer on 3.com, Blue White Illustrated. Half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com and News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Party time, game time, or just fun time. Doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection. Imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.